I was an Omega born with defective glands, weak in character, yet somehow caught the eye of a hot-tempered young heir. He kept me like a caged canary in his home. At first, I thought once he got bored, I'd finally be able to leave. But to my surprise, my stomach started to grow day by day. 1. When I got the report from the hospital, I was still pretty calm. No, when I saw the result, I actually let out a sigh of relief. Lately, my stomach had been uncomfortable, with dull, constant aches, nausea, and bouts of vomiting. It left me depressed, unable to focus on anything. Ever since my secondary gender settled, my pheromones had been a mess, and my glands had their fair share of issues. So whenever I felt even the slightest discomfort, I always thought it was just my body acting up again. The result this time wasn't too bad. In fact, it was almost exactly what I expected. Mason was always rough in bed, trying all kinds of things. And since we already had a permanent bond, having a baby didn't seem all that strange. As for whether he wanted it or not, that was out of my hands. I had stopped worrying about that a long time ago. When I got home and stepped into the inner courtyard, I could already see him through the floor-to-ceiling windows, sitting on the sofa in the main living room. He was dressed in a dark set of loungewear, one leg crossed casually over the other. His brows were drawn low as he flipped through something in his hands. Maybe he heard me, because suddenly his eyes lifted, sharp and cold. His gaze was intimidating, his expression severe, and he looked frightening. My throat tightened. I lowered my eyes in panic and walked inside. A servant handed me slippers and whispered, "Sir didn't see you when he got back. He's in a bit of a bad mood." I nodded. "Thank you." The housekeeper glanced at me, then gave me a gentle smile. I clutched the bag in my hand before setting it down on the shelf by the door. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Mason's gaze land on me. I took the warm, damp towel from the servant and wiped my hands before walking over to him. Without hesitation, I settled onto his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck like I always did. The servants in the living room had all gone off to the dining area. Mason lifted his hand, his cold touch brushing across my face, making me shiver. His long fingers slid down my neck, then grabbed the knit sweater I was wearing. With one sharp tug, the already loose neckline slipped off my shoulder. I gasped, my head turning to the side. My gland was now completely exposed under his eyes, still covered by a black lace inhibitor collar shaped like a rose. His fingertips hooked against the lace trim. "Where did you go?" I thought back carefully. I had an orange, an apple, 2 nougat candies, a bowl of noodles, and went to the restroom. I wasn't lying, not one bit. The place I'd gone today was my friend's clinic. I hadn't even tried to avoid the bodyguards Mason arranged for me. I'd occasionally go sit with her for a while. She would hand me a pile of snacks with a stony face and then leave me alone. But when I unwrapped a piece of candy, she'd suddenly say, "Don't choke." When I drank water, she'd mutter, "There's hot water." It wasn't that I really needed looking after. That was just how she treated everyone. At least, that's what I believed. 2. Mason knew all this and allowed me to keep in touch with my friend. His fingernail scraped lightly across my fragile gland, and I instinctively pressed my legs together. His hand fell lower, slipped under my shirt, and pinched the soft flesh at my waist. "You've gained weight." I rested my chin on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of his alpha pheromones. "Maybe a little." Sir, I'd like to get up." The stern look on his face softened slightly, and he let me go. I sat to the side, pulling the collar of my sweater back over my shoulder. "Have you eaten yet?" I asked. He studied my blank expression, cupped my face in his hand, and replied with something completely unrelated, "Your face is red." I blinked. "I'm hot. How could I not be?" His pheromones overwhelmed me so easily. Even the faintest trace made my legs weak. But whatever, it wasn't as if I had ever kept much dignity in front of him. His fingertip brushed across my cheek before he finally answered my question. "Not yet. We had dinner together." Afterward, he went to his study to deal with work, while I received a message from my family. Don't let him know. He definitely won't want this. Just get rid of it quietly, don't cause him trouble. I had told my parents about it earlier. Now they were finally giving me a definite plan. Back when Mason first set his sights on me, my family was facing bankruptcy. My parents worried about me at first, but later they were satisfied with the arrangement. Mason was young, capable, and unbelievably powerful in the capital. Being chosen by him was, in their eyes, my good fortune. Annoyed, I tossed my phone onto the carpet, crawled into bed, and pulled the blanket over my head. When Mason first brought me home, I had fought him fiercely. For the first 3 years, I ran, I screamed, I fought with him. Whenever things didn't go my way, I'd threaten to hurt myself. In the end, I was left bedridden, sent to the hospital several times, and eventually ignored by him for a while. That was when I finally quieted down. I didn't know how much time had passed before Mason returned. He saw me curled up on the bed, his brows faintly furrowed. Henry. I heard him call me. I really didn't want to respond, but I slowly pushed the blanket back and gave a dull "oh." Clutching the blanket over the lower half of my face, I stared at him with wide eyes. In the bedroom, Mason never restrained his pheromones. The faint orchid scent wasn't cloying, it was pleasant. But with my underdeveloped glands, I could only catch the faintest whiff. So I used to think even the smallest trace of Mason's pheromones was enough to make me surrender. I even believed we were highly compatible. He glanced at my flushed face and said coolly, "I told you not to keep burying yourself like that." I wasn't, I muttered, annoyed. It was only for 2 minutes. Mason ignored that. Climbing onto the bed, he pulled me into his arms. What's wrong? You don't look happy. I set my hand on his chest. That's just how I am. You don't like it, do you? Mason's tone was cold. Don't use that mocking tone with me. It sounded harsh. But that was just who he was, a ruthless man. He wasn't even trying to be mean. If it were anyone else, Mason would be even colder, even crueler. Still, my chest tightened. My eyes and nose stung, and I whispered hoarsely, "I'm not." He let out a heavy sigh. Henry, I didn't scold you, and I don't dislike you. Be good. I won't bother you tonight, just sleep. My head felt heavy, as if sinking into soft cotton. I felt on the edge of losing consciousness, neither happy nor particularly sad, but with a strange urge to cry. Yet the tears wouldn't come. I tried to roll over, but he immediately pinned me down, his voice low. Move again, and I'll take you right now. I froze instantly. I still hadn't decided whether to tell him about the baby. The doctor had warned that in the first 4 months, it was best to avoid intimacy. But a few days ago, we still had, well, whatever. It hadn't caused any problems. 3. The next morning, Mason dragged me out of bed to help him with his tie. We're going out for dinner tonight. I'll have someone pick you up. I was groggy, still half asleep, my eyes damp as if I might cry. His words startled me, and I looked up at him. With who? Mason met my watery gaze. His Adam's apple bobbed hard, his mood already restless that morning. Seeing me like this only made his frustration worse. He forced down his irritation and desire, answering curtly, "A few friends." I murmured, "A few friends?" "Sir, Before I could finish, his lips pressed against mine. He couldn't help himself, his hand clamped around the back of my neck as he kissed me deeply. After he left, I touched my sore neck, dazed, and sat in a trance. Then I pulled the blanket back over myself and went back to sleep. In the afternoon, his assistant came to pick me up. Truthfully, I didn't want to go at all. At past events, I'd overheard one of his friends advising him, "Henry's just a defective Omega. Don't get too attached." To be honest, Mason's friends were all heirs of wealthy families in the capital, or at least rising stars in the elite circle. Most of them were no good, spoiled and messy. That day, I'd just come back from the restroom and stood hidden in the hallway. Mason was outside, a cigarette balanced between his long fingers. Under the light, his figure was tall and imposing. He exhaled a cloud of smoke and simply replied, "Our pheromones match well." I lowered my eyes, thinking, birds of a feather flock together. None of them are any good. When we got home afterward, I insisted on sleeping in a separate room. During that time, I was unusually energized, no longer listless. I even asked my brother to arrange a job for me. I wanted to stand on my own, to break free from Mason's control as soon as possible. But unfortunately, my alpha brother only thought I was being childish. He laughed and teased Mason, "Did you upset my little brother? Otherwise, why would he suddenly want to work? I've never let him suffer even a bit." He thought he was standing up for me, but the moment I heard that, my face turned pale. Mason lounged on the sofa, one leg crossed, a hand resting casually on his thigh. His long fingers tapped lightly, his gaze lowered as though he was considering my brother's words. My brother, satisfied with Mason's expression, turned to me, patting my hand gently. "You haven't worked since graduation. You've been out of society for too long, I'm worried you'll get bullied. How about this? I'll give you an easy job. You can play around with it when you want." I had thought my brother came today because he missed me. Instead, he was here to back me up. And worse, I hadn't told Mason anything about this. I couldn't imagine how angry he'd be once my brother left, knowing I'd gone behind his back like this. The excitement I'd felt earlier drained away, leaving me cold again. 4. "Oh, all right," I agreed, then quickly added, "but let's just drop it. I really don't think I'm capable. I was just being impulsive, talking nonsense. Don't take it seriously, brother." I dug my nails into my fingers until it hurt, forcing myself not to show any trace of my bad mood. Seeing my face grow darker, my brother frowned and called my name, "Henry." At that moment, Mason cut in, his tone sharp and cold, "Enough, brother. This is my fault for not thinking things through. I'll talk it over with Henry later. For now, let's eat, he hasn't had anything yet." He rose to his feet as he spoke. Tall, broad-shouldered, and commanding, his presence alone was enough to make my brother drop his big brother attitude. My brother scrambled to stand as well, laughing awkwardly. Yes, I'm starving too." I was still twisting my fingers when Mason came over. Without a word, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me up, half drawing me into his arms. His grip tightened on my hand as he scolded coldly, "Didn't you notice the nail marks already? If you've got this much energy, I'll deal with you later." The last line was spoken in a low voice, but the chill in it made my neck shrink back. That night, after finishing his work, Mason pulled me into the lounge behind his study. I remember crying so hard that night, sobbing against his chest until I couldn't breathe. To anyone listening, it might have sounded like Mason was tormenting me. But the alpha didn't lash out. His eyes were dark as he held me close, stroking my damp hair. "What's wrong? Still upset? All these days of sulking and you're still not satisfied?" I pounded his chest with my fist, tried to push him away, but he dragged me back. "Don't move. Do you want trouble?" I bit down hard on his broad shoulder. Not enough to break skin, just enough to hurt a little. He didn't even get angry. Instead, he pinched my cheek tightly. I glared at him through a stream of tears. He didn't ask why I was crying, didn't ask if I felt miserable. Mason always knew his limits. He pushed me only so far, never far enough to break me. But tonight I was clearly throwing a tantrum. Still, he didn't show any impatience. He did what he always did, steady, unshaken. It was me who finally ran out of steam. I lay to the side, only half covered with a blanket. Mason tugged it up over my shoulders, then pulled me firmly back into his arms, his arm and the blanket wrapping around my waist. "Want to work?" he asked. I rubbed my face into the pillow. Not anymore. Mason's voice was flat. Then stay home. Give me children. As many as you can. The words stung. My hands clawed at his arm, but his muscles were hard and slick with a faint sheen of sweat. I couldn't hurt him. Mason gave a short laugh. Pathetic. For a while, neither of us spoke. I was on the edge of sleep when I suddenly muttered, "I don't like you." The arm holding me tightened at once. His voice was low and hoarse. "I don't care." By then, I had already been forced to live with him for more than 2 years. Later, I avoided going out with him even more, which led to countless fights. He was harsh, sometimes violent. After a quarrel, Mason would go and fight at the boxing gym, several times injuring his bodyguards badly enough to land them in the hospital. Eventually, I stopped fighting with him altogether. But his temper was awful, his dominance unshakable, and his mind unreadable. I always ended up in tears. Back then, I just felt unbearably bitter. 5. Now that I had to face another dinner with Mason's friends, I was restless. I wanted to hide somewhere, preferably in the rose house in the back garden, where I had secretly stashed a snack box. At least if I got hungry, I could sneak something to eat. "Young master, your phone is ringing." The housekeeper's voice pulled me back. I picked it up. Mason's deep voice came through the line, "Henry, it's raining outside. Bring me a jacket, the knit one you bought. It's in the cloakroom you hate going into." I got up to fetch it, asking, "Anything else?" "No. Just wear your inhibitor collar and dress warmly, it'll be cold tonight." He paused for a moment before adding, "Come downstairs quickly. I'll be there in 10 minutes. My eyes widened. "You're coming to pick me up?" A quiet was all the reply I got. Well, all right then. By the time I came downstairs, the car was already waiting in the front drive. Mason was still inside, speaking in a foreign language to someone on the phone. I couldn't understand most of it, just a few stray words. I set the jacket in the front storage compartment. He looked up then, his sharp gaze still edged with menace. His eyes moved from my hair down to my face. "What are you staring at?" I snapped. My tone was harsh, though I knew perfectly well why. I had taken the time to fix myself up tonight, unlike when I stayed at home. I muttered under my breath, "Of course I need to look good when going out." I leaned against the window, staring outside. Mason finished his call, hung up, and pulled me over to him. "Who taught you that? Acting so domineering, snapping at me just for looking?" He yanked me into his lap, pinching my chin before kissing me. His high-bridged nose brushed against my inhibitor collar, lingering as he drew in a deep breath. The faint scent of roses clung there, fresh and clean. For a moment, Mason's composure cracked. His hand slid toward my jacket, tugging at it as if to pull it open. I struggled lightly. "Sir, you're wrinkling my clothes." He pressed a kiss against my neck. "Don't move." "I won't do anything." 6. When I got out of the car, my eyes were red, my lower lashes wet with tears. Mason had already slipped on the soft, loose knit sweater I had bought him, and his usually sharp, imposing aura softened slightly. I had bought it on a sale, 2 pieces at a discount, so I picked one out for him. Mason had never worn something so cheap in his life, but he seemed to like it. At the private room, a few friends were already there. But to my surprise, they weren't the alpha group he used to hang out with. I recognized some of them, the doctor among them I knew relatively well. Occasionally, I could even add a word to the conversation. The dishes were a bit rich, though, and I felt nauseous. My face was pale, and I only managed a bowl of rice. The doctor glanced at me. "Not to your taste." I was about to answer when Mason set down his chopsticks, making a sound. "Henry." I looked at him. "Pour me a glass of water," he said. "Oh, sure." I poured him a glass of hot water and forgot to respond to the doctor. Everyone exchanged a knowing glance. The doctor rolled his eyes at Mason quietly. When Mason used to be more chaotic, he had never been this easy to deal with. Probably because I was unusually low-spirited today. After dinner, everyone dispersed. On the drive back, Mason was replying to messages again. The city lights flickered outside. I stared out the window at the busy streets, at the young people bustling past, my expression detached, uninterested in any of it. Finally, Mason fell silent beside me. I murmured, "Sir, you've changed, you're not hanging out with your old alpha friends anymore." I realized I might have sounded like I was criticizing his old friends and quickly pressed my lips together. Turning to him, I said stiffly, "I didn't mean it like that." Mason just gave me a knowing look and finally said, "You hold grudges." He was deep-minded. Back when I insisted on sleeping in a separate room and wanted to work, he had investigated and found out I overheard their conversation. Mason didn't care much about what an Omega thought and never explained anything. At first, he had forced things without giving it much weight. But during that period, his Omega, me, had suddenly bloomed like a rose, lively and full of spirit, only to wilt abruptly after being denied by my family. So when I said, "I don't like you," even though it struck a nerve, Mason surprisingly didn't lose his temper. He held the wilting rose in his arms and said, "I don't care." He always got what he wanted, and even if it withered, he could nurture it back. 7. Back home, after washing up, I couldn't stop pressing myself against Mason. He reached for the cabinet next to him, but I frowned and shifted away from him. "I don't want to." Even so, with my eyes closed, my body gave him free rein. Mason's expression darkened. Without hesitation, he turned me over, but my clothes were barely adjusted before I gasped, "Don't regret this." Every word carried weight, resolute and decisive. Anyone hearing it might have thought I was threatening him. His alpha scent was overwhelming, and I was barely able to withstand it. My head was foggy, and I really believed I could control him somehow. Mason's eyes narrowed dangerously. He gripped my cheek and turned me toward him. His voice was icy. "Hiding something from me?" I froze, a heat rising in my eyes. My hands clutched the blanket beneath me. He flipped me over again. I kicked his thigh. Mason's brow twitched as he met my angry glare. His temple tensed as he warned, "Henry." I shouted back, red-faced, "Why are you calling me Henry, Henry? It's so annoying, I. My whole body was burning from his scent. I bit my lip to stop any sound from escaping, averting my gaze. Mason exhaled heavily, turned to sit beside me, and picked up a cigarette to light. I angrily crawled over, snatched it from his mouth, broke it, and threw it on the floor. Then I got off the bed and left the room. Mason's eyes darkened, probably both angry and worried I might actually hurt myself. 10 minutes later, he came to the Rose House looking for me. The Rose House was stunning. Pink roses climbed the walls, creating a breathtaking view all year round. I lay on the large sofa, stunned, my mood low. When I heard his footsteps, I didn't turn around. "Henry, let's talk." His alpha presence swept through the rose scent, surrounding me. Hearing this, tears fell before I could wipe them. Mason lifted me into his arms. He watched the tears roll down, pressing his fingers against my eyes as if to stop them. Roses in the house would wither eventually, their petals falling at the peak of their bloom. 8. I feel uneasy. I didn't know why or where the discomfort came from. Hurt, I feared the pain. Sick, I feared death. The more I loved something, the more I worried about losing it. Careful, hypersensitive. I was loved, and yet, it sometimes felt like I wasn't. Family was like that. Mason was like that too. Even a small exception could throw me into panic and unbearable pain. So melodramatic. I used to grow roses too. When it snowed, I didn't move them back indoors, even though I had passed by that pot countless times. In the end, the rose almost froze to death, leaving only a few tiny roots trembling as they struggled to grow. Then I blamed myself for not being attentive enough, feeling guilty and sad. I usually took a casual attitude toward many things, like being sent to Mason by my parents. Or learning that I was going to have a baby. Yet, in certain moments, a wave of anger and helplessness would hit me. I felt like that rose, abandoned yet desperately trying to cherish itself. So whether things went well or badly, life went on like that. He lifted me up as if I were a child and strode forward. His alpha expression was icy, his tone serious. "You're only this way because I spoiled you. That's why you're so delicate now." I rubbed my tears on his shoulder, voice muffled. "No, it's not true. You're so fierce, I had no idea before." It was long ago, the first time I met Mason at a banquet. He was meticulous, wearing a tailored suit, broad-shouldered and narrow-waisted, exceptionally handsome, standing out in the crowd. Alpha, stern and commanding, looked cold and indifferent. At that time, my family's problems were worsening. Though they told me not to worry, I always saw my mom and brother crying. If the family went bankrupt, they could endure, but what about me? An Omega, could I even marry a decent Alpha? Naive, I said, I can endure hardship. I can earn money for mom and dad. My worried father shot me a stern glance. What can an Omega like you do? Just thinking the family might go bankrupt? Go to your room. He soon realized he had overreacted and apologized. It's my fault. I shouldn't have lost my temper with you. The family is tough, but we're holding it together. I felt helpless. That banquet became a turning point. My gaze was drawn to the Alpha, and he happened to look at me. Our eyes met briefly. His glance was indifferent, but my heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, there was a surge of Omega pheromones. Chaos erupted, and Mason was affected. Amid the confusion, I was almost knocked down by a panicked Alpha. My face went pale, clutching my neck, stinging as if pricked. But the next moment, that Alpha was kicked aside, and I was dragged into a room. Terrified, I screamed. "Shut up." The sharp command made me look at him. It was Mason, the Alpha my brother had always wanted to meet. For some reason, his scent eased the pain in my neck. I went silent. I had assumed he would be polite, a gentleman, but he was fierce. His eyes darkened, pinning me to the wall. I tried to turn my head away from his burning breath, exposing my neck to him. Trembling, I asked calmly, "Sir, is it your sensitive period?" I'll find you a suppressant." His nose pressed suddenly against my neck. I closed my eyes. "Is that okay?" Mason asked hoarsely. I shook my head through tears. "No." The suppressant patch was bitten away, his canine resting against my gland. "I can help your family through this," he said. He knew me, having asked a friend casually. My family's situation wasn't a secret in the circle. I froze, hesitant. Or maybe swayed by his pheromones. 9. The temporary mark eased Mason's restlessness. I had thought it was just an emergency measure, ignoring his promise to help my family. But over time, the atmosphere at home grew tense. Only then did I realize Mason had already informed my family and given them choices. Though I was only with him briefly, every difficulty my family faced seemed to be solved, even improving their situation. Yet I was the child they had raised in their palms. Did my parents consult among themselves? Worried I'd be at a disadvantage, worried I'd suffer. Everyone seemed to care, but no one asked my opinion. For the first 20 years, life had been carefree. The best of everything. Now, it was my turn to give back to the family. That night, Mason returned home. He had been drinking but didn't touch me, too busy. He was colder than I imagined. I had just graduated from college, my temper impulsive, and sometimes I would run when conflicts arose. Coming home, my parents sighed, urging me to return quickly. At that point, the best I could do was endure and avoid angering him. I left in a daze, and Mason's car was parked by the roadside, as if certain I wouldn't stay in this house long. I was bewildered, feeling like I had no home. That was the most confused I had ever felt. Even with shallow tears, my eyes were just red-rimmed. Now, I didn't even know why I felt increasingly fragile. 10. Lazily leaning on Mason's shoulder, I suddenly felt drained. He rarely talked about the past. Mason wasn't the type to look back, but tonight I had mentioned it. Back in the room, getting ready to sleep, he suddenly asked seriously, "Henry, was the past not good?" I wasn't sure what he meant by not good, but thinking carefully, over these 6 years, I couldn't pinpoint anything specifically bad. I faced away from him, silent. He moved closer, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Little one." His tall frame almost enveloped me. I squirmed. "Cheesy." I didn't respond, he just pinched the soft flesh on my waist. It wasn't that he didn't want intimacy, but recently, our relationship felt a little delicate. My mind wasn't on that anyway. I hadn't expected the family doctor to come the next day. I also hadn't intended to hide anything from Mason. After the checkup, the doctor was astonished. "How?" I didn't expect. He hesitated, eyes on my stomach, then looked at Mason, expression complicated. "Still impressive." Originally, my gland development was insufficient, conceiving would have been very difficult. I left the living room. Mason spoke briefly with the doctor, his expression also complex. When he entered the room, I was on the carpet, organizing clothes and accessories in my favorite walk-in closet. 6 years of life accumulated here, there were a lot of things. Holding a folded sweater, I heard his footsteps approach and said, "I don't know if I should." I didn't ask him, because from the beginning, I knew this decision had to be mine. Mason paused among the clothes, voice calm, "This child is mine too. I want to keep it." I glared at him. He crouched down, suddenly gentle, "But I'll follow your choice. I just wanted to tell you my stance. I'm happy." He held my hand, eyes reddened. "I'm sorry. I love you." He suddenly felt happy, not because of the child, but because he felt closely connected to his Omega. More importantly, Mason realized he needed to hold on firmly, to give strength to the person in front of him. I lowered my gaze, didn't look at him, and after a few seconds of silence, said evenly, "I don't mind." I watched his eyes calmly, as if I truly didn't care about his attitude or the love he rarely displayed before. I remembered grudges for a long time. He had said things like this before. So, when he looked at me expectantly, I said the same. Sure enough, I caught a fleeting moment of surprise on Mason's face. I felt a subtle thrill. He always carried that high and mighty air. So annoying. I got up to leave. He grabbed my hand, lifted my chin. "Henry." It was like he was begging me. I could see softness in his eyes, a liking or something deeper. Okay, a lot deeper. But I didn't care. I pulled my hand back casually. "Stop bothering me." Then I left without looking back. Just as I stepped out of the closet, footsteps sounded behind me. My heart skipped. Before I could turn, I felt weightless, suddenly lifted horizontally. Eh. Mason carried me into the bedroom, placed me on the sofa, half kneeling on the carpet, holding my hand. "Henry, I really want this child. Please." I pressed my lips together. "But it's going to be really hard." His eyes were bloodshot. "Horse," he said, "I'm sorry." I unconsciously held his fingers. His hands, like him, were perfect, beautiful and comforting to touch. Sometimes, when we were affectionate, I would compare his hand to mine, twisting and playing with it. Let me think about it. The room was thick with entwined pheromones. 11. That thinking took 2 months. I couldn't help it, I was indecisive. If I had been able to decide earlier, Mason wouldn't have noticed. His firm yet submissive attitude gave me peace of mind. I had been in a good mood lately because Mason kept running into little frustrations. For example, I'd sleep early and wake late, meaning his early to late schedule gave him no chance to talk to me. He couldn't wake me to help with his tie like before, and he scowled all the time. His assistant and driver complained endlessly. When I was free, I would shoot vlogs and upload them to my social media to record daily life. I had accumulated some followers in college. Later, my mood was unstable, and when I recorded a few daily videos, the negative energy was strong, so I stopped for a long time. Now, resuming the vlogs, I was surprised my followers still remembered me. Life got busy, and I didn't focus much on Mason. Lately, he didn't seem as busy as before. He could postpone many dinners. If I wasn't available, he wouldn't travel. Occasionally, he worked from home. So my vlogs often included glimpses of him, sometimes his voice. Filming a video? Little one, pour me a glass of water. Walk slower. Hey, the clothes you bought me? I'd respond grumpily, how should I know? I'm not your wardrobe manager. Then came his laugh. I mumbled, annoying. Editing videos was mentally draining. With him appearing so much, I often didn't know what had been recorded. Fans went wild seeing them. OMG, so you stopped uploading because you got an alpha? I hadn't appeared on camera, only my voice, some glimpses of my back and hands. I didn't respond to the comments, but it was true. Some fans even dug up my approximate residence and guessed my alpha was very powerful. I wasn't pleased, so I paused uploads for half a month. Mason asked why I wasn't updating. I said seriously, it's my account. I want something that belongs only to me, and now everyone's discussing who you are. I don't like it. Mason said earnestly, little one, your possessiveness is stronger than mine. But I'm your alpha, aren't I? Aren't I yours? Who cares what strangers discuss? We're one. Those are just unknown fans. I ignored him and slept sideways. His nose nudged my face, you can post more. I think it looks good, really, very healing, as young people say. I frowned. You're barely 6 years older than me. What young people? He laughed. The next day, the doctor came for a checkup. For the baby's health, they collected our pheromone data last time. For the first time, I realized Mason and I had less than 50% pheromone compatibility. That was low. I looked at the doctor in surprise. Didn't he say we were highly compatible? I had always believed that without doubt. The doctor smiled. He probably just thinks so. I was stunned, unable to understand him. When my parents and brother came over, I was happy, and so were they. My mom pulled me aside, smiling, I didn't expect him to care so much about this child. Good thing you didn't listen to us before and terminate it. My face darkened. Even after everyone left, my mood stayed bad. Mason was busy in the study, handling work, and I leaned against the sofa, seemingly lost in thought. Suddenly he spoke, Henry, come here and let me hold you. I glanced at him, thought for a moment, then got up and sat on his lap. Sir, I'm feeling a little down. His hand rested gently on my stomach. Am I not here? Right here. This house is yours, the child is yours, Henry. The one who wants a home is me. My throat tightened, and I buried my face in his neck. The subtle scent of orchids made me feel calm. Perhaps what had made me angry before was that our beginning hadn't been as orderly as I imagined. They had tossed me around so much that I hated the uncertainty of whether anyone truly loved me. But at some point, Mason seemed to have felt troubled, silent, and contemplative because of me. And then he changed. He rarely said, I like you, or I love you. But sometimes, in the quiet night, in the warmth of bed, he would softly say, Henry, I'm very sorry I didn't learn to love you from the start. Every time, I reacted sharply, don't say that. I don't care. I didn't live off anyone's love. I didn't want to hear such words. Mason would get unhappy and start fussing over me. He was overwhelmingly dominant. Now, hearing him say he finally wanted a home, my eyes involuntarily grew wet. He cupped my face, my tears hung at the edge of my eyes, ready to fall, but Mason's hand caught them. He had always been assertive, wanting to get what he wanted. Yet gradually, Mason realized that loving someone truly meant valuing their tears. A withered rose could bloom again at the right time. Its petals fell when the bloom was at its peak, only for new buds to sprout, fresh leaves and blossoms under the sun, blossoming beautifully all year round. When our child was 1 or 2, Mason took care of him most of the time. Sometimes, when I was busy, he would take the child to the office. Occasionally, he would bring him along to dinners. Then I would go pick them up. Mason would inevitably carry some resentment, which he made up for later in bed. I was both angry and let him do as he pleased. Mason kissed me over and over. He never cared for meaningless words. Now, holding me firmly in his arms, this was the best outcome.